speak on the phone? Chris.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
How's it going?
Yeah, feel free to do that audio and like pictures and all like that.
You got out here, huh, Mitch?
I made it, yeah. Holy cow.
It's an incredible crowd.
Yeah.
Great.
Electrical problems. We'll give them 2 minutes to see if they get straightened out.
Plug it in.
Then I'll just have to talk loud. Say hi to everybody else.
Getting new sound system.
Looks good. What do you got on the side of it? Oh, I don't know who those people are.
Rogers Rangers. Probably a special unit.
Looks good. Revolutionary War.
Oh.
That was the last one to do reenactments. Gettysburg.
Probably.
I hope they don't.
We'd love some doing that. That's kind of interesting. You ever see those reenactments?
More Native American, indigenous people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I gotta talk loud.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming today. I'm Congressman Grothman's Chief of Staff. Just want to run through how we run our town halls, and then we'll all stand up together and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So we start out by the Congressman giving an update to everyone, usually about 15-20 minutes, what he's working on in Congress, different things that are happening both in DC and in the district. Then we'll answer questions. If you did not get a form to fill out your name and a question on it, please raise your hand and one of our staff will get you one of those. But those just randomly go into a bucket and randomly get picked out. Chris over here with the blue coat, he's going to be picking them out today. He's going to try to say all of your names right, but please forgive him if he does mispronounce them. So, and as he's reading everyone's names, please don't talk over him, just so everyone can hear the names that are being read. Once you have your name drawn, if you could ask your question, feel free to sit or stand, whatever you're most comfortable with. Congressman Grothman will answer your question after you ask it of him. And so we're hoping to get through as many questions as possible, and we have a good sized group today. So thanks all for coming out. If we could stand up and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance together.
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Congressman Grothman will start out.
Okay, like Rachel said, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened in Washington, then open it up for questions. You hear a lot of people saying we're not getting anything done in Washington. That's not true. We actually get along quite well. There are obviously some big problems and some things we should be doing that we haven't done yet, but they have passed over 400 bills so far in the House of Representatives, most of them bipartisan. a relatively small percentage are just the Democrat Party pushing them through. By the way, before I say any more, I should point out the importance of the majority, because I didn't realize the importance of the majority party until I was a state legislator in Madison. The majority party picks the speaker, and the speaker is the one who determines what I have a chance to vote on. In my first 4 years in Washington, the speaker was either John Boehner from Ohio or Paul Ryan from Wisconsin. Now the speaker is Nancy Pelosi from California. I think I have an adequate relationship with her, but she decides what I have a chance to vote on. So we're going to be talking about some bills today that I wish could pass, but they're not going to pass because they don't get a chance to vote on them at all. The majority party also determines the committee chairman of each committee. And most of the time I'm in Washington, I don't spend on the floor with all the other congressmen, I just spend in committee. The chairman of those committees is always determined by the majority party. One of the committees I'm on is the Education and Labor Committee. My first, in the last 2 years, during my second term, the chairman was a woman by the name of Virginia Fox from North Carolina, Republican. Now the chairman is a guy by the name of Bobby Scott from Virginia. He represents the area along the Atlantic Ocean. I think I have a good relationship with him. He determines, is that better? He determines when I have a chance to vote on or what we're going to have hearings about. In my other committee, the Oversight Committee, last year the chairman of the Oversight Committee was Trey Gowdy. Now the chairman is a new gal by the name of Carol Maloney from New York. Actually, the first 9 months of last year, the chairman was a guy by the name of Elijah Cummings who died. But I think we have a good relationship with Carol as well. Nevertheless, she determines what we're going to have hearings on, what agenda we're going to take up, what bills they get to vote on. There have been some good things done. I think my favorite thing done in the first year of this biennium is a robocall bill. I co-sponsored the bill. I'm not usually in favor of big government, but I thought we need a little bigger government with regard to robocalls. When I'm driving around, you get a phone call. They frequently are clever. They have a 920 or a 262 area code on there. So I think it's one of you guys calling me or something like that. Then it turns out it's something wanting to refinance my student loan that I haven't had for 30 years. So hopefully by the end of the year, if all goes according to plan, because it's going to take a while for the telephone companies to figure out how to do this, we will put an end to these robocalls, and insofar as anybody makes calls, they'll have to be able to tell you where they're coming from. So that'll be a step in the right direction. The other thing that I hope we're able to get done, we've had a couple of hearings on what they call facial recognition technology, where they can take a picture of your face and they know everybody who's anywhere. It's very abused already in Red China. Like if you would say attend a church service or something, they may take a picture of you and they go on your permanent record for the next 40 years. We want to make sure that doesn't happen in the United States, and we're going to restrict the degree to which they can use that technology. I would like to see them restricted overwhelmingly, because they already can see in this country, it was at a gun show this weekend. I could see people taking a picture, he was at a gun show. Political rally was at the Trump rally last week. I could see people in the future say, Joan Smith was at the Trump rally and we don't like her or whatever. So we're going to have some bill like that come out of the Oversight Committee. On the Republican side, while I'm helping them out, are what they call ranking members. A guy named Jim Jordan from Ohio, who I know real well, and I'm confident we'll get a good bill out of there. Hopefully they'll take that bill up in the Senate. I do try to, when I introduce a bill, if possible, always get a Democrat lead as well. There's a better chance the bill will move if I have a Democrat on board and a Republican on board. The other thing I am trying to do to make sure people get along is once a year there's a dinner with the Republicans and the Democrats where we get some informal sort of thing, but it kind of forces people to get together and socialize. I'm going to be the Republican in charge of arranging that this year. My Democrat partner arranging it is a woman by the name of Robin Kelly from Chicago. And I wasn't really satisfied with the number of Republicans we had in the one last year, so I'll try to be a little more aggressive and try to set my sights on getting 35 or 40 Republicans to that. As I mentioned, the first committee, my favorite committee, my favorite committee is the Education and Labor Committee. I think the major thing that we will try to accomplish there is a higher education bill.
I think insofar as the federal government gets involved in education, they have not done a good job on a couple of fronts. First of all, we have too many people going to some sort of education after high school, and it doesn't really lead to a decent job. And that's unfortunate, particularly because wherever you go, you need more people to work. And you know, there's such a need for employees out there, and they aren't getting trained for the things we need. I think there are two types of facilities in particular we need more people for. This district that I represent, and we'll digress, there are 435 congressional districts in the country. There are more manufacturing jobs in this district than any other one in the country. And you know, you think of cities like Fond du Lac or Oshkosh, Alliance Laundry over here, the John Deere plant. There are a lot of big manufacturers. Nevertheless, wouldn't you think if I said the most manufacturing jobs, it'd be Houston or Los Angeles or Pittsburgh or somewhere? It's here. And wherever I go, we really need more skilled people in manufacturing. The other thing we need more of is people in the medical field. To a certain extent, that's because people are getting older, but I don't care if it's a hospital, a clinic, a retirement home, wherever you go, we have a shortage of people in the medical field, and particularly nurses. We've got to get more people trained for that, which is a very valuable thing. You're going to be high in demand. If you know anybody who's young, children, grandchildren, if they want to go into the field, will have a job for the rest of their life. Tell them to become a nurse. So the things I'm doing there, first of all, we are trying to use, or should be using, the Pell Grants or the loans, that sort of thing, to encourage people to go into fields in which there is a need and they will be able to get a job. The second thing we should do is, I feel to a degree, well, the university should have the ability to tell young people, you don't need a loan the size you're taking it out. Because I run into so many people with $30,000, $40,000 in student loan debt. They're in the middle of their 30s. You know, they're in a position in their life in which they should have a house, should be married, should be having kids, and they still have this big loan. Part of it is, a lot of people, I'm told, and I'll believe this because it's true, and I went to school 40 years ago, some people take out loans bigger than they have to take out because they like to have a lot of fun, or they like to live a better lifestyle in college. And I think some responsible administrators in universities are saying, hey, I want the right to be able to say that, you know, if you ask for a $7,000 loan, the university can say, hey, I'm looking at your papers, you only need a $4,000 loan. Because that extra $3,000 is a lot easier to sign to take out when you're 18 than to pay back when you're 30 years old. During the 90s, during the Clinton administration, they began to enforce a law that said that you cannot prevent somebody from taking out a bigger loan. I think that was a mistake. And the idea being that if you're 18 years old, you can do what you want. But I know, 18-year-olds sometimes are mature enough to make that decision. So hopefully we'll straighten that out a little bit. And the other thing is, we feel that we should maybe sanction some of the educational institutions if too many people are not paying their loans back. Because to me, a little bit of that is on the university. They all tell everybody to show up. We get our enrollment up, this sort of thing. But if a bunch of people are going there and taking out $40,000 in loan and not paying it back, a little bit of that fault should be on the university. I'd like to sanction them a little bit. So those are kind of the things I would like to have happen in that higher ed bill. The other thing we're dealing with in the Education and Labor Committee is the labor side of things. And there they're doing some things that I quite frankly think are a little bit radical. They want to change some of the labor union laws that I'm not really thrilled with. They want to do things where you can show up at a business and say it's as short as 11 days. We're going to have a union election here, which is kind of a surprise thing. They want to take away the secret ballot for whether when you have a union election, which again doesn't seem to be right. They want to give people the access, if you work somewhere, to all a person's private contact information, be it email or phone number, so you can call people and talk with them independently, which I'm not exactly thrilled about. And they want to bring back what they call secondary boycotts, where if the union strikes, you could strike, somebody else can strike to kind of help out another union, which we haven't had in this country for quite a while, and it's quite damaging to the economy. The other committee I have, like I said, is oversight. One of the things there that we are dealing with is facial recognition, which I'd like to think something good will come out of it. We've had 2 hearings on this vaping stuff, and what we determined is that the big problem there is particularly young people are putting derivatives of marijuana in these vaping type cigarette things. I wondered what was going on because you hear people dying from this, and I've dealt with a little bit of this when I was in the state legislature 6 years ago. I never heard of people dying, but I think what's going on, if you know any young people, make sure if you use these things. I don't know why you'd use them other than to give up smoking, but if you use them, don't put any drugs in them because that can become very dangerous very quick. The other thing we've talked about there is the census. Things are not going the way I wanted there or the way President Trump wanted. I very much feel that in the census you should have a question whether or not you're a citizen. And it's highly controversial. A number of people in this country illegal. I know for a long time the press would talk about 11 million people. I think it was MIT. Somebody else did a study and they thought there were over 20 million people here illegally. It seems to me that's almost the first question you'd ask, isn't it? Whether you're here legal or not. But there was a judge who struck down the effort of the Trump administration to find out whether people were legal or illegal. That used to be a question on the survey. There are some people who don't want it on the survey because they're afraid that people won't fill out the survey. But to me, that's almost the first question you'd ask. So unfortunately, in the survey, we are not going to know how many people here are legal or illegal, or if we count the number of people in Burnett here, how many are citizens and how many are not citizens, which I would think should be automatic. Next issue I'll talk about that I am involved in is immigration. I was at the border 3 times last year. I continue to believe in the short term that's the biggest crisis affecting the United States, because we're dealing who's going to be living in this country not only now but in the next few years. And it's worse last year. 145,000 people were processed by the Border Patrol that probably shouldn't have been here. That was in May, 145,000 a month. At that time, if people said they were seeking asylum, and anybody could say they're seeking asylum from another country, we were letting them in this country, giving them a court date to show up, but usually people didn't even show up for the court date, so it was really just like leaving another 80 or 90,000 people in the country in addition to people who are coming here legally. By the way, recently it went up. We're now around 750,000 people being sworn in legally as citizens in the United States. I had attended one of those ceremonies down in Milwaukee, and in Milwaukee, let me see what it is. They have 6 ceremonies a month. They got about 70 people at ceremonies. Over 400 people are sworn in as new citizens every month in Milwaukee. So about 5,000 people in Milwaukee. They also have ceremonies in Madison. I'm not sure how many there, but you can see it's not like we're preventing people from coming in this country. People want to come here legally. But in any event, Donald Trump has since reached an agreement with Mexico, which some people don't like, want to go to court, saying that if people want to come to this country, they have to wait in Mexico first for their court date, so they don't disappear around here. President Trump has also reached agreements with countries in Latin America, or in Central America, and they will try to hold people who genuinely are trying to get asylum from places like Venezuela, right? Because if you really just want to get away from danger at home, you don't go 1,000 miles, right? If there's danger in the United States, you probably go to Canada. You wouldn't go to Iran or something. And it doesn't really make any sense that if you are looking for asylum from a place like Venezuela or Brazil, that you'd come all the way to the United States. So some people who are seeking asylum are being held or given jobs in Central America, and other people are held by the Mexican government for now. And I think as a matter of fact, I talked to Mark Morgan, the head of the Border Patrol. He tells me they've gone from like processing 70,000-ish people who were placed somewhere in the country in May to under 1,000 a month in December, which is so, as what he tells me, it's really a huge success story as far as making sure only people who are coming in this country are people who are appropriately vetted. Like I said, I intend to go back down on the border one more time in February or March, see what's going on. Last time I was down there, I felt that people were being treated very well. The Border Patrol felt that the health care for the people who are coming here is actually better than health care most Americans receive, because most Americans today, they have co-pays, right, or deductibles and that sort of thing, so you're reluctant to go to the doctor. You show up at the southern border illegal, they have a protocol, certain amount they have to do in the first 48 hours, certain amount in the first 72 hours. If you need medical care, you go right to El Paso and go to the emergency room. It bothers some of the local people because, of course, when you go to the emergency room, you sometimes have to wait. Now you go to the emergency room in El Paso. Some illegals may be getting preference over you. But nevertheless, we're very generous there. I toured one of the facilities where they held the minors. It was very good. They break them into facilities for boys and facilities for girls. I toured one for the girls. In addition to medical care, they have free education, math class, English class, science class, social studies. They get some ability to exercise, 3 warm meals a day plus unlimited snacks. So I think they're not only getting more food now than they did in their native country, but also better medical care than in the native country. It was kind of interesting when I was there. I asked the folks whether the critics of the education system ever went through there. And they said they did. I said, what did they tell the press? They said they tell the press it's a concentration camp. The only thing that looks like a concentration camp is there's a fence around it. And understandably, you have to put a fence around it. I mean, if we have a 15 or 16-year-old girl coming in this country, we can't just say, run out to the city of Laredo and do whatever you want. We kind of become responsible for them. And that's why we want to hold them until we find somewhere to keep them. But I was in general pretty impressed, and I'll go back there one more time as far as how people are being treated. There is one bill that I am introducing that's immigration related. Right now, if a minor comes here from Canada or Mexico, and it's not unusual to get a minor coming on their own, or sometimes somebody will rent somebody else's child to come here because it's easy to get in the country with a child. If it's a Canadian or Mexican child, we can send them right back. If it's a child from another country, and the other countries don't like this either, we have to keep them if they want to come here. So, we wind up having to find a foster parent or whatever for a 16 or 17-year-old. I would like to change that law and say, hey, wait a minute, a young person comes here, we can send them back to their parents. And like I said, these other countries don't like it either. I mean, Guatemala or Nicaragua, they don't want to see their future disappear into the United States. They want to hold on to these kids as well. So hopefully we'll be able to get that bill through. I have a couple other bills I'm working on. I'm working with a Democrat by the name of Chuy Garcia from Chicago on payday loans. Payday loans are these places, cash advance and whatnot, that charge exorbitant interest rates. We had, prior to me getting to Congress, passed a bill barring these near military bases because they were taking advantage of some of our military folks. I don't know why we wouldn't restrict these high interest rates for everybody under the sun. That bill is not out of committee yet, but the Democrats promised me they are going to get it out of committee. So we'll see. I keep talking to them about it every week I'm down there. I continue to think we have somewhat of a problem as far as a welfare system that is sometimes a little bit sucks into people into a lifestyle. I have some bills on that. The reason I say that it sucks people into a lifestyle, if you look at the number of people on food stamps in 2004 and 2019, it's up about 50%, which is shocking. I mean, right now the economy's awful good. We've had a recent reduction in the number of people on food stamps, but the economy was pretty good in 2005, say, as well. So you'd figure there'd be about the same number of people on now as that. I mean, people go through a short-term tough time. Sometimes people just can't work because they have mental issues or whatever, but there shouldn't be a 50% increase over a 14-year period. So things that we can do that I think will reduce the number of people. I'd like to have a photo ID on there. I always talk to people who are clerks in a grocery store. I like to talk to people who are in a convenience store, Quick Trip, that sort of thing. and they routinely say we wish we had photo ID on there because we know it's being abused. The other thing, I'd like to put work requirements on there, particularly if you don't have children. There's no reason why people shouldn't at least be trying to get a job. And I think in the past when individual states have done that, a lot of people have a tendency to fall off the rolls. And something that President Trump wanted, he didn't get in the tax package. You sometimes hear wealthy people aren't paying their fair share. One clear way that is true is in some kind of boring thing called carried interest. If you are a hedge fund manager and are buying, selling whole companies, right now you do not pay full ordinary income tax on the income you're making through investments. They give you capital gains rate on that, which they really shouldn't be doing. I think it's just outrageous. I tried to get that out, get that special treatment out in the big tax bill we passed. I think because of influence of just some very wealthy people, we weren't able to get it done. I hope to talk President Trump, who's on my side in this issue, to get on TV, do something about this in a State of the Union address. And I think if he does, maybe we can push something through. But that's another bill I have hopes for. And the reason I have hopes for it, it's the type of bill you'd figure the Democrats would want to pass. But they aren't making an effort there. Another one, it bothers me the cost of drugs. But one, it's not exactly a drug, but one thing that really bothers me is the high cost of insulin. The person who invented insulin did not plan on making a lot of money on it because it was so important for the people. But the drug companies, I think, are just overcharging on this. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take what are called biosimilars, which is very similar to insulin, and say that the drug companies cannot delay their getting this to market. And if this happens, and we are also able to, well, for that reason, we should be able to greatly decrease the cost of insulin for people. If you know anybody on it, it's sometimes shocking the amount people have to pay for that, which is really bad considering the guy who invented it expected to be available for very, very little. So those are some of the bills that we have around. Where's my clock? There it is. Okay, why don't we open it up for questions and have a nice turnout here and see what's on people's minds. Do we have, oh, here we have the, we'll read them out of the.
Steve Stevens.
I have a question about education. I'm concerned about what the kids are learning and what they're not learning anymore, especially in relation to civics and history, and not being able to get, when you talk to them, they just don't seem to know anything.
Do you have any of our state legislators here? No. You know, I think the curriculum in schools is kind of a state issue. When I was in Madison, I was there for quite a while. There's some things I still wish I had done and didn't. And one of those things is I wish they'd teach young people about communism. Because I don't think young people know what a special country this is and how it differs from other countries around the world. And that's a problem. I'll agree with you. I think with regard to civics, people don't understand what we have and why we're special. And I think that's why you have politicians running to fundamentally change America. And I think if you understand the history of this country and what we've done in this country, I don't think people should be wanting to fundamentally change this country. So I agree with you. When I see, I have one of my state legislators as the last one of these. Hopefully I'll have one at the one later tonight. If it is, I'll bring it up to them. They can steal the bill that I would have introduced.
Just wondering about the education secretary, or one of the committees that you were on, if they're able to set some kind of standards, and if there are standards, why aren't they being?
Well, the problem with setting standards on a federal level is in the federal level is kind of determining what the curriculum is, right? If the federal government says, I'm going to set the standards for, and I should know what school district do we go to in Burnett? Oregon. If the federal, if the federal government's going to set standards for the Oregon school district, it kind of means the federal government can determine the curriculum for the Oregon school district, and I'm not sure we want that. You know what I mean? It should be something that's done at the state level.
John Cole.
Cal.
Cal.
Yeah, my question question is, are we doing anything about this unsustainable national debt that we have? I mean, we're spending, there are more ideas for every day.
Okay, I was gonna talk about the budget that we just passed that I voted against. I'll explain to you the problem. The problem, first of all, is not President Trump. The budget was too free spending again, about a 4.8% increase, and that's only on the part that we vote on. We vote on what they call discretionary spending. We don't vote on mandatory spending. The reason it's so high is there are a lot, not all, but a lot of Republicans want to spend more on defense. We just had 11% increase a couple of years ago, so we don't have to go up in defense. But there's been an informal agreement reached between the Democrats and Republicans that we're going to go up the same amount of defense as non-defense. And what's happened, and this is an example where you shouldn't want the Republicans and Democrats to get along. A bunch of Republicans say, well, as long as I get a 4.8% increase in defense, I'll vote for anything. And a bunch of Democrats that want 4.8% increase in discretionary, and I don't care how much the other goes up. So they shake hands and say, wow, everybody's happy. We got big spending increases for everybody. President Trump proposed a responsible budget with no increase, and Congress gets a hold of it, and it's just more and more and more for everybody. It's an example why sometimes bipartisanship is not good. I think right now President Trump is to a certain extent preoccupied with the border, and quite frankly preoccupied with this impeachment stuff. And he doesn't really have the time to also use all the political will it's going to take to get a responsible budget through Washington, through Congress. I am hopeful if he gets reelected, he makes it a priority. Because my belief is the American people, if they understood what was at stake, they would be happy to even have every program take a 10% cut. I mean, not Social Security, because that's you paid for in advance, but across the board. But President Trump really has to put a lot of political capital in that if he's going to get it done. I know he's got the will to do it, but like I said, right now, I feel in addition to all the other things he's doing, he doesn't feel he can afford to say, shut down the government to really take on Congress. And maybe if he gets reelected, he'll begin to do that. I'm glad you brought it up, because I think it's important on meetings like this, the congressmen hear that people are concerned about the debt. Because normally what happens, if I'm in Washington all day long, I have meetings with people who want more money. And I can see why my colleagues keep voting for stuff. Usually if there's a new program out there, and it happens all the time, you look and it's the same 30 to 50 of us that are voting no on the new program. And everybody else, even the majority of the Republicans, vote yes. And it's just an easier thing to do. But it's going to break the country. And we're up to the point where it's about $1 trillion debt a year, $1 trillion a year. I mean, it's just out of control. And if people ask me, can we ever solve it? It will take a president really using all his political capital to do it. And I hope President Trump, say a year from now, is around there, and he has the personality to do it. Like I said, it's going to mean, I'm a Republican. It's not just the Democrats' fault, it's the Republican fault too. I mean, the people I work with. As Calvin Coolidge said, it's easy to spend other people's money. Or no, he said, there are few things in life more enjoyable than spending other people's money. That's what he said.
James V, right?
Yeah, I think you go on to the next person. I don't have a specific question. I was just listening to some of the new bills you were talking about.
Okay.
Kenton Regnerus?
I'm gonna need another person too.
Christopher Ross?
In your newsletter, you describe your support for National Bible Week while affirming your belief that the Bible is the Word of God. How do you reconcile your views on food stamps and immigration, including the border wall, with what Scripture has to say about caring for the poor and welcoming strangers and foreigners?
Well, I think obviously my job is to make sure we have a strong United States in the future. And I don't think any country can exist if we open the borders to everybody under the sun. I mean, I think that those statements in the Bible are meant for how you behave on an individual basis. You know, like if your neighbor is in trouble or that sort of thing, you want to help them out. right now, the way our welfare programs, and that includes food stamps, exist, is the way they're set up. In order to take advantage of them, you can't work too hard or work very much, and you, if you're a parent, if you want to take advantage of them, you should get married. So I think to set up programs that say don't get married, don't work very hard, is kind of a big problem. There are people who need help, and on a personal level, if I find people like that, I try to help them. But to set an overall program and say you get something for not working very hard, or you get something for not getting married, and if you get married you're going to lose it, I think that's just a recipe for disaster for the United States. I think as far as letting people in this country, as I said, we're up to swearing in about 750,000 new people a year, which is a fairly high number. It's bigger than it was just a few years ago. I think compared to even per capita, it's higher than most countries would do. But obviously, we should be picking who comes in here, not take anybody who comes across the border. And I think for me to play Mr. Nice Guy by I think ruining America for everybody else is not right. I mean, some of that has to be people improving their country at home. I said I went down to the border, and I'll tell you something else about the people coming here that they point out to me from the Border Patrol. People come here because they think they can. Things were a lot worse in Central America 25 years ago, but not as many people were coming here because they thought we enforced our laws. They didn't try. Now, since the word is out that we don't enforce the law, a lot more people are trying to come here. And at least the Border Patrol, judging by the clothes people wear, that sort of thing, they feel some of the people coming here are really relatively well off. Maybe people are better off than average in Brazil, but the Brazilian economy isn't good, so they'll come here. Or they find people who are doctors from Cuba coming here. Now, maybe by Cuban standards, they're not that bad off, but as long as they can come here, they will come here. I can think of no country throughout history in which you're supposed to just take unlimited people from everywhere, including if you read the Old Testament of the Bible.
Tom Stone.
I'm tired of these endless wars. We have no mission, we have no victory plan. The generals seem to be, I don't know what they're doing.
Well, I think President Trump largely agrees with you. I mean, he fired Tom Bolton. That kind of is a statement in its own right. I think we have a moral obligation to a degree to look out for people who have helped us in the past. And I do think overall, the fact that we have had a relatively stable world for the last, really since World War II, can largely be attributed to a strong American military. I mean, I'm somewhat rare among Republicans. I think we're spending enough on defense. We keep going up. But we do need a strong defense. And if there was ever a major, huge war, I think it would be much more damaging to the economy than having the strong defense we have. I do think President Trump, perhaps unlike his predecessors, is not looking to get us involved in any war. I mean, clearly we've dialed back a little bit the number of people in Afghanistan. We are not out of Syria, but he's dialed it back a little bit. So hopefully you're happy with that.
Deb Jones.
Yeah.
There she is, Deb Jones.
Yeah. For the people that vote, and our country is really, really divided.
Right.
And today is Martin Luther King Jr.'s day, which I find surprising. Answering to him about why do we keep having all these wars, my big question is that because of the division of what's going on in the government, that these, and Trump has no power over in these other countries. They laugh at him. They talk behind his back. He hasn't made America great again. He's divided us. And my thing is, you, as a representative, do you just fully look at the Republican side totally, or do you ever look at a Democratic side or an independent side and try to base your decisions on that and all work together, or are you just, well, I'm a Republican and that's the way it's gotta be?
I can't remember if I repeated everything. I am trying to get together the annual dinner with Republicans and Democrats get together. I mentioned the bill that I'm the Republican lead on payday loan stores, which is primarily a Democrat bill. I didn't mention that a couple weeks ago I was one of maybe 30 Republicans to change the rules on age-based discrimination. You know, you're not supposed to discriminate on all these different reasons, and it's harder to sue on old age than race or sex or that. I was one of like 30 or 40 Republicans to vote with the Democrats there. So I'm not afraid to vote with the Democrats. I think with regard to how foreign countries view us, last week I attended a dinner with the Hungarian embassy, and they were very thrilled with the current administration and were scared to death that we would change presidents, so I can tell you they like him. I was over in Europe last year for a few days, and at least the people I talked to from Germany felt very strongly, very favorably about our government right now. And I met with some representatives of the Japanese embassy, and they went out of the way to say how happy they were with our government right now. You know, we finally reached an agreement. It was only a partial agreement with China about trade. I don't think they'd be reaching agreements if they didn't like our government. So I think right now around the world there might be some countries that don't like us, but I think there are a lot of countries that like us as well, and I don't think they talk about that enough. I can just tell you those Hungarians just thought the world of our government.
I was a parent educator for the Head Start program and the early Head Start program for 40 years. And it was federally funded, and we followed the performance standards too. And it's a really wonderful, thriving program. We work with pregnant women through children age 5. I just retired, but I kind of disagree with the fact that they're just sitting around, you know, getting food stamps. After if you could spend a week with me and go into the trenches of where the people are, number one, they don't have a car. Number two, childcare is so expensive they can't even afford it to work. And then if they do go to work, and especially, I hate to say that, if they're a minority, they're getting $7.25 an hour. So and I see my son and daughter-in-law working full time, but they can't afford any health insurance through either one of their works. And yet they're off by $10 for food share. And they're the working people. They have 3 children. And my son was like saying, they're getting all of these food stamps and everything, and here they're just scraping by. So the normal working American people are upset about that. But I also know that the people that you think are you know, just gonna be welfare queens and stuff like that, that's not true. People do wanna work, and they do wanna take care of their children.
Right. The thing I will point out, you know, there's a variety of people. The thing that concerns me, and I can't remember whether I told this group or not, is in the last 15 years, the number of people on food stamps has gone up by 50%.
But so has the population.
But the wages haven't gone up.
The population hasn't gone up anywhere near that amount. Maybe the population has gone up 5 or 6%.
You think we have a great economy, we don't. That's the reason why they're stuck.
Well, I think you can always have a better economy, but at least when I talk to businesses right now, and what you read about in the paper, it's about the strongest economy we've had in my lifetime.
Well,
I mean, you can always complain and say it should be better, but you look at the overall income that people are earning, you look at the low unemployment. I mean, wherever you go, people are looking for people to work now. I wish all those jobs paid $25 an hour. They don't all pay $25 an hour, but at least there's a high demand out there for people to work. In most places I go, they're also looking for overtime. So, I mean, you can always say it's going to be better, but it's the best it's been in my lifetime.
Brittany Volch.
Yes, thank you. I want to start by extending thank you to Representative Grothman today for hosting a town hall on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. as it is a national holiday and allows many working folks to be able to turn out to his town halls that are during normal business working hours. I implore a representative to continue to host them, of course, but if you can make your hours after 5 o'clock so more working families can be in attendance, something we can all appreciate. On the topic of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we celebrate his legacy today, one of fought tirelessly for civil rights in our country and ultimately led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which you already touched on. Piece of the landmark civil rights case that outlawed discrimination based on sex, race, creed, national origin, prohibiting unequal application of voter registration requirements and racial segregation in schools. His life ultimately was cut short by hatred rooted in white supremacy for simply standing up for what he believed to be right. And today we need to still have that same courage. We look and see the injustices that are still happening in our communities today. Like the school to prison pipeline that is overwhelmingly impacting young Latino and Black boys, high rates of maternal deaths among Black mothers, and the disproportionate rate at which Native and Black trans women are disappearing across our country. As Representative John Lewis, your colleague, said, my philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to stand up, you have to say something, you have to do something. And this year we all have an opportunity to stand up with our vote. We have our primaries and we have the general elections for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. We have it for our seats in the state legislature and of course for the President of the United States. And I ask that everybody please use your vote wisely this year. Please vote in and vote out folks who do not align with what we see to be a moral and just society. My question for you, Representative Grothman, is related to an amicus brief that you and 206 other representatives from Congress submitted pertaining to women's reproductive rights that would ultimately ask the Supreme Court to review and overturn certain legislation that gives us the right and autonomy to our own bodies. I'm curious to know if you know what percent of the folks of that 100 or that 207 people were men. The answer 198, 96%. And I'm curious if at any point you guys ever stopped and looked at one another and asked one another, should we as men be having the authority to write or repeal legislation over women's bodies?
Well, first of all, you get kind of a statement on injustice in society. And there's always going to be injustices, but I think America today is kind of the envy of the world. I think if you talk to anybody throughout human history, not that you don't see problems on the horizon, but say where and when in world history would you want to live? And I think most people would say, I'd love to be born in America in, say, 1970 or 1960. I think, and you can tell that in part by the fact that people want to come here from around the world. And I know there are people who say America is fundamentally broken and we have to fundamentally change it, and there are politicians who have to say we have to fundamentally change it. I think they should take stock of the situation and wonder why people from all around the world keep trying to get in here. And if you're going to fundamentally change it, what are the odds you're going to make it better? And what are the odds you're going to make it worse, like so much else the rest of the world or other countries throughout history? So, I mean, you can always improve things, but I think we're in pretty good shape right now in the United States.
Why?
Yeah, I know, and you talked at length before you got around to your question.
Could you answer though, at what point?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm pro-life throughout most of this country.
I am too. I am too.
Throughout most of this country's history, abortion has been illegal. And I think that was even before we had ultrasounds, and people could look at the ultrasounds and see what was going on there. And I think the fact that we have ultrasounds makes it even more obvious that abortion is not a good thing. I think right now our country is probably going the other way. As you know, in New York, they passed a bill allowing abortions almost, right at birth. And it looks like they're going that way in Virginia as well. So I think you should feel good about the way the country is going, but I'm not sure the average person does or should.
Ireland just passed a bill.
Ma'am, you already asked your question, we have to go to other people.
I know. It's not addressing your issue.
Go to the next meeting.
my first question was answered earlier, but I've cooked up another one for you.
Good.
Keeping it local.
A quick thinker.
Come back to the district.
Okay.
You mentioned, the strong manufacturing base here.
Correct.
These guys work, they get a lot of stuff done.
Right.
They're smart people. What do you got, in mind for the next generation of this district? What's the next manufacturing base going to be? What can we begin to do now that's going to, set Wisconsin into the place it needs to be a manufacturing and an innovative leader, in energy production or next wave manufacturing practices that's gonna help this group right here, continue to thrive.
Well, I can tell you right now, there are job openings everywhere, and a lot of manufacturing facilities are looking to expand. It's always difficult for the government to guess which one of those products is going to grow in the next 10 years and which will not. I think throughout history, probably the government will be the last person to guess that. But obviously, we have hundreds of manufacturing facilities in this district. Whenever I tour them, they're always looking for new markets or saying we're building this or building that. And obviously, automotive is still a big thing around here. Whether that's going to be as big a deal in the next few years or not, I don't know. I mean, I think President Trump is doing what he can through tariffs to build the manufacturing base and make us more competitive around here, which I think is a good thing. When I was a state legislator, I treated manufacturing different than other businesses as far as tax treatment is concerned, because I do believe in manufacturing. You're making something and making society wealthier, unlike things like, say, law firms.
Do manufacturers, do they agree with the tariff implementations? Has that been beneficial for?
It's a mixed bag, but I am surprised the degree to which, even pleasantly surprised, the degree to which the average manufacturer likes the approach President Trump has taken. I mean, they feel that over time, particularly on the intellectual property, the patents and that sort of thing, they feel we've been taken advantage of for 30 years. And the number of people who come up to me and say, even if it costs me money the next 1 or 2 years, President Trump is playing the long game and it's the right thing to see. Which quite frankly surprised me. I'll tell you something else. As far as being supportive of President Trump and his all the way, you get a lot more support from the small businesses around here. By a small business, it might be a company-owned business that hires, 600 people, so it's not tiny small. But you get a lot more support from the individuals who are literally losing money or not doing as well because of it than the big multinational outfits out of Washington who are only worried about next quarter's profits, which is something that's kind of illuminating for me.
Well, especially this year.
Right. Which tells you, I wish we had more family-owned businesses and less of these multinational conglomerate things, which, like I said, I think they're just worried about next quarter's profits.
Mary Ann Kell?
My question is there any chance that new health care reform debate will come up again?
It's going to have to come up because it's a huge problem.
What is the idea what we might be changing it to?
President Trump has promised, right now he's not going to get what he wants because of the makeup of the House. He has promised that we'll vote on some plan in January if he gets reelected. I think in the past, what is the word where you have consortiums or associations of healthcare plans? Individual businesses are doing a good job of managing healthcare costs if they have a sizable number of employees. So you get over 400 or 500, certainly over 800 or 900. They have clinics in employer-based clinics. They're able to monitor different costs of things and outcomes in different places. They're doing a good job of managing cost. Somehow we have to duplicate that for smaller businesses as well as for individuals who buy health insurance. In the past, they set up co-ops. They didn't work that well because health insurance companies would cherry pick the businesses or the individuals with good health care background, and the cost would skyrocket for everybody else. However, I think we have to change some of the laws with regard to that, and if we do that, we can get a little bit of a handle on cost. President Trump claims, and I haven't confirmed the figures, that we had a mild drop in prescription drug prices last year, which could be true. He's done a good job of getting more generics to market and undercutting some of these overpriced drugs. But I think we have to duplicate what innovative businesses are doing for 600 or 700 employees. Do that for a smaller group, and we get a handle on it. The underlying problem is cost, right? As long as cost keeps going through the roof, you've got a problem. The reason cost keeps going through the roof is because the government keeps paying so much without caring about cost. I'll give you a little bit of a lecture. There are two areas in society in which the cost has gone through the roof the last 40 years and make it more difficult to live, say, than my parents had it when they were living. One is education and one is healthcare. And they're the two things the government keeps piling money into. So the government piling money into it only makes it worse because it allows people to be more efficient or whatever. And you have to have the incentive for the health insurance industry or the health provider industry to be more efficient and provide things at a smaller cost. What we spend in this country on healthcare compared to other countries per capita is a fright. It's not like our people are living any longer. And I think some of these businesses are taking control of pre-market or free market principles in which they're able to determine, it costs you X amount to get a hip here and X amount to get a hip there. They're able to keep track of it. That's an asset. They don't incentivize the provider community to just do more and more and more. As my former doctor says, pills and procedures. All they do is hand out pills and procedures. And I think if you do that, you can get a handle on healthcare costs in the country as a whole. If I'm writing the bill in January, that's going to be a big part of it. I won't write the bill, of course. I'll just be.
Stephen Benedict?
Yeah. Immigration. They're doing a fine job with the wall. What we should do, reopen Ellis Island and take Alcatraz and then those two port entries only. That way they won't come. Look at the doors. See the doors in here. 1, 2 doors. But there's more doors you gotta cover. 2 ports of entry. We should be doing that. That's what I feel. Okay.
There are ports of entry south of the border. Part of the problem is even in the ports of entry, people are coming here claiming they're asylum. They don't need asylum. But you're right. As the Border Patrol points out to me, even at the ports of entry, even if you shouldn't be here and are trying to sneak in, at least there's some vetting process. So not only are people coming in not at the points of entry without a wall, but it's the worst people coming in that way, right? Because if you didn't have something to hide, why wouldn't you just show up at the regular point of entry? But they are finally beginning to build the wall. I wish President Trump would start quicker. I think he's taken some money out of the defense budget, which is fine. I think they have more than enough money in the defense budget. I've been down there, and they want to build that wall, or the new wall. It's a little over 30 feet high, and it's 5 or 6 feet in the ground. And it does do a good job of stopping people. And we've told some people to try to get across. It's a very difficult thing. They want cameras and such on the wall as well. And not only is it necessary to keep the bad people out of the country and keep the drugs out of the country, but you're saving lives too. I mean, if we don't control our border, who controls our border? The Mexican drug cartels. And anybody who doesn't want a wall, they gotta realize if we're letting people across that border, if our border patrol isn't patrolling that border, the Mexican drug cartels are patrolling that border. People are dehydrating to death in the Arizona desert. People who are escorted across, women are being sexually assaulted, children are being sexually assaulted, either we're gonna get control of the border, or we cede control of the border to the brutal Mexican drug cartels. And people who don't think there's a crisis down there are nuts. There's a crisis, in addition to people coming out of the country that shouldn't be here, that border is being patrolled by the gentle souls who run the Mexican drug cartels. They were, I can't remember the number of people who were dying every year from dehydration in the Arizona desert. It was hundreds of people. And that's what happens when we're not managing it, they're managing it.
Vicky Bartoli?
Yes, I have a question. There's 2 million people working for the federal government in civil service. And Trump ran on law and order in 2016, and then we have these elite bureaucrats in the FBI, CIA, NSA, breaking all these laws, and the private sector who did some of that, you'd be in jail or prison. When is people going to be held accountable?
Well, as far as Congress holding them accountable, as I mentioned.
Well, why do we have laws if they're not being, like Coleman, Brennan? Why do they violated their jobs and they're exempted?
I wish that both the Senate and the current FBI were more aggressive into looking into this. There are all sorts of people.
Well, you had Lois Lerner in the IRS.
Right.
I mean, it's been going on for decades.
You look at, what's that thing with the gun running, guns south of the border? Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious. Right. I think what happened is, I don't need to speak for him. I think President Trump didn't want to over-politicize the bad things the last administration, so it was as aggressive as it should be. Obviously, it hasn't done a lot of good. That's all I can assume is the reason why people didn't look into it. When we were the majority, we just didn't look into Fast and Furious, or we should have looked into it more. For those of you who don't know, Fast and Furious is where the government kind of made sure guns were
We in the private sector, us here.
I know.
We would be in jail.
You would be in jail.
So why are
There's
they
no
exempt?
doubt
It's like
about
the
it.
4 branches of government now. We have the bureaucrats, 2 million strong.
You're absolutely right, and to say it's a swamp is right. Right? I mean, you've got a group of people in Washington whose primary goal is to protect their power and not deal with anything, do what they can to prevent people from draining the swamp. They have some allies in Congress who are just as much part of the swamp, and some of those people are Republicans too. I'm glad when you show up. I'll try to talk about that more with my colleagues when I get back to Washington, and hopefully you'll see me in another one of these in a couple months and you'll find out how I did. But no, I agree with you entirely. It is amazing what people did.
Well, what's the deficit? You got 2 million people working for the federal government.
Yeah.
Is it all necessary? Maybe that some of them employees don't do
No.
it. So that would cut some of our deficit.
And it would free up people to do some of the jobs that we have to do around here, yes.
All right, we're getting close on time, what we're doing here. James Ungard.
I can see. First statement I want to make before I ask the question is how many people here, I wonder, watched Fox News, watched CNN, and Newsweek, and how many people have watched the president's rallies and speeches? Because I think none of these. Now, the question is, because I was retired, I had the opportunity to watch the Kavanaugh hearings almost totally. I had the chance to watch president's speeches. I had the chance to watch the Congress on the impeachment fiasco totally. And I'm sitting here saying, when, as a congressman, a Republican congressman, is one of them, any one of them, all of them, gonna get up, bang those brass cojones together, and call for the charge of treason against the Democratic Party, literally treason. And they, sir, they have, with bigotry and prejudice from before the president became president, when he just started running, had the intent of impeaching him, and they hated him, and they showed that bigotry and hated. Isn't there a law now against bigotry and hatred? They are committing it. when are they gonna be called on the carpet for that and put out of business? Ideally, we should make a barge with a cage and put them all in, and put them a mile and a half out in the countryside, and watch the country that they used to live in.
Well, we obviously have elections every 2 years. I don't want to get too political here, but I think when it comes to where people stand on issues like unlimited immigration, if they get their way, I don't think the United States as we know it could exist anymore. There are people, maybe they're well-intentioned people who think we can take everybody under the sun, but we can't. I think as far as division is concerned, I said before, I think the way they elevate and importance a person like Al Sharpton, who has fomented riots where no riots were necessary, why in the world you would tie yourself or want to stand next to somebody like that, much less promote somebody like that unless you wanted to foment division in the United States. I don't know why you do it. People are, if they pay attention, they're going to get what they want. We'll have another election in 2 years, and we'll see what happens.
Alright, that's all we have time for today, but I don't think Congressman's gonna hurry up here, so
I
feel
want
free to
Dash
stay
out of
on.
here. I'll be happy to talk to more people. Like I said, I don't spend a lot of time.